I thank the chair. The last time we moved all 12 appropriations bills through the House, I believe, was in FY 2010. The last time that we did not have to use a continuing resolution to be able to fund government, I believe, was 1997. I think 4 times in my lifetime have we been able to pass all 12 appropriations bills through both bodies and get them signed by the President of the United States. This institution is failing. It's failing to do the one core thing it's supposed to try to figure out what to do. And that isn't the spending bills. It's actually defending the United States of America, securing the border of the United States, doing what the Constitution actually prescribes, what the preamble lays out, securing the blessings of liberty. We're not doing that. And we end up in a vicious circle every single year, the same vicious circle. And the American people are watching and they're wondering, why on earth cannot the 435 people sent here to represent them figure out how to do what every other family and business and nonprofit in the United States has to do? And the short answer is, it's because we can and do print money. We irresponsibly continue to spend money that we do not have, that we have not collected, and we continue to retreat to the corners of our safe political spaces and hide behind them in order to try to sell something to the American people. My colleagues on this side of the aisle tend to hide behind national defense and say, well, we must do this, and therefore we must spend more money that we don't have in order to accomplish the goal of defending the United States, which, by the way, I would question whether we're actually defending the United States when our borders are not secure. My colleagues on the other side of the aisle have never met a program they don't want to advance to make another promise that we can't fully honor to the American people in the form of some additional welfare payment or additional bunch of free stuff. But yet we never pay for any of this. Not a dime. We are taking in $4.5 to $5 trillion and we're spending $6.5 to $7 trillion. Like, what are we doing? I mean, it's absurd. And the American people look at us and they go, what on earth is wrong in Washington? We end up back at the same spot every single year. This year, the Speaker put forward a proposal that would have had the continuing resolution extend into 2025 and then would have guaranteed that we know that only American citizens vote in American elections, in federal elections. Now, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle like to dismiss that as an issue that is not a problem, non-existent, despite the data rolling in from states with their limited tools to go determine the citizenship. We had the Secretary of State of Florida testify in front of the subcommittee on the Constitution that they don't have the tools they need. They had to sue the federal government to get the limited tools they're using. Other states, Texas, identified people that were on the rolls who are non-citizens. We know it's a real issue. So you have this simple measure that just reinforces existing law to ensure that issue, and we have violent opposition from our colleagues on the other side of the aisle, and then inexplicably, a handful of people on this side of the aisle who wanted to oppose that measure out of some sort of deference to opposition to a CR, and then set the circumstances for where we are right now today, where we find ourselves with the Speaker putting a short-term CR into December, which was the natural outcome, the predictable outcome of the opposition of the plan put forward by the Speaker 2 weeks ago. It's more of the same games that get bemoaned by the very people complaining about the games. You can't complain that the games are going on and then play games. That's the truth. I appreciate the Appropriations Committee chairman for working and trying to work across the conference, across the entire body to figure out how to get something done. We passed 5 appropriations bills. It's better than none, it's not 12. Last year we passed 7 appropriations bills. Better than none, not all 12. The Senate, led by our Democratic colleagues over there, have passed 0. Not one. Not one appropriations bill has the Senate sent out of that chamber to this chamber. So who is it who's serious about wanting to do our job? Because I will say that despite my concerns, publicly stated concerns about some decisions on this side of the aisle, the truth of the matter is that had our Democratic colleagues been in charge of this chamber, what we would have seen is a massive increase in spending. The non-defense spending would have gone up, whereas we have kept it flat. The defense spending that did go up, we paid for out of the IRS expansion. We pulled that back so you didn't have IRS agents in your living rooms if you're a middle-class taxpayer. And we took COVID money and we paid for that defense increase. And we were able to stop what the Democrats would have done, which would have passed legislation in the name of border security that would codify the dangerous release of individuals onto the streets of the United States that have led directly to the death of Americans. Americans like Jocelyn Nungray, whose beautiful 27-year-old mom testified in the Judiciary Committee because her daughter went missing after she put her to bed on Sunday night. And on Monday, she finds out that she was gagged, bound, and raped in Houston, Texas, and murdered. Alexis Nungray is a hero and had the courage to come testify about that, about what happened to her daughter. And are we doing anything about that? No. Our Democrat colleagues refuse. Instead, they want to hide behind a bill in the Senate that they couldn't even get out of the Democrat-controlled Senate, that never had any chance of passage. And they want to say somehow that that was a grand bipartisan bill. Because what? A couple of Republican senators had a couple of conversations with them about it? But the bill had no chance of moving, and that bill would have codified Kamala Harris, the border czar's mass release policies into the United States. Laken Riley is dead. Jocelyn Nungray is dead. Kayla Hamilton is dead. Rachel Marin is dead. I could go down the laundry list of Americans who have died at the hands of people released into the United States by this administration. I could go down a laundry list of examples of non-citizens voting and our colleagues on the other side of the aisle not caring about it, wanting to continue to fund an executive branch that is refusing to follow the law, blatantly disregarding asylum laws, blatantly disregarding parole laws to endanger the American people. That's why some of my colleagues here, by the way, didn't want to support a CR, because they don't want to fund an executive branch that's at war with the people. Because if you're a Texan, and now increasingly across the country, like Laken Riley in Georgia or Kayla and Rachel in Maryland, you can't help but believe that this administration is in fact at war with your well-being. You have gangs now operating in Dallas, gangs operating in Colorado. You've got expansive criminal activity and fentanyl pouring into our streets. And we're not doing anything about it as the Article I branch that is set here to check the Article II executive branch. So here we are again, kicking the can down the road, to quote my friend, and he is my friend, the gentleman from Kentucky, Thomas Massey, with whom I disagreed on our tactical strategy with respect to the CR plus SAVE Act. But the CR plus SAVE Act was designed for a reason. We should secure American elections. We should guarantee that only American citizens vote in American elections. And we should not be kicking the can down the road to December 20th, a mere 5 days before Christmas, which is what this town always does. Because this town is built around K Street. It is built around people believing they need to spend more money. And when we do that, then we just take another chunk out of the hide that is the fabric of this country, racking up more debt. 2 years ago in 2022, a $1.7 trillion omnibus bill was passed when? December 23rd. That is not an accident. It's by design. It's on purpose. That's what people in this town want. They want the pressure so that everybody will clap and get on their planes and go home to open their gifts and be around the Christmas tree with their kids while they destroy the very country that they're here to represent. That's what will happen unless we fight it. So now we're going to have to spend a lot of time, and I will, fighting against whatever massive omnibus bill is tried to jam down our throats on December 20th before Christmas so that everybody can enjoy their jet fumes and roll out of D.C. Last time we threw in $45 billion for Ukraine for good measure. in that massive omnibus spending bill right before Christmas. We shouldn't be in this place. We shouldn't be in this position. I think the Speaker was correct. I think the Appropriations Chair was correct in working with the Speaker, and our body was correct in putting forward a bill that would have extended spending into next year, allowed the next president, allowed the next Congress to deal with this issue while we try to preserve and protect American elections. That's what we should have done, without a reserve.
Gentleman from Texas reserves. The gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I reserve.
The gentleman from Oklahoma reserves.